So now that I've had iPhone's new goodies in the studio for a little while, I wanted to talk about some of the initial surprises from each of these products because I got all the iPhones in hand, I got the new AirPods Pro 3, I got the new Apple Watch Ultra 3, and the Series 11 Apple Watch, and while there's some really good surprises that really wowed me, there's also a couple of other ones on the other side that really left me kind of scratching my head. So without further ado, these are 13 surprises that I came up with my initial first impressions that I think everybody needs to know about before going in and purchasing these products. Let's get into it. But now before we continue, definitely consider subscribing to the channel if you do enjoy videos like this one, and stay tuned for some of our longer term reviews on some of these new Apple products. But let's get into the first surprise, which has to do with the 17 Pro Max. So let's start off with the 17 Pro Max. The first thing that I noticed after I turned it on and got it all set up were the cameras. The cameras are actually substantially better, maybe not from a quality perspective, but from a capability perspective. So the one that really jumped out to me was going from the 5x telephoto that we had on the 16 Pro and Pro Max to the brand new 8x optical telephoto. I know Apple, maybe people are saying it's a little bit misleading by calling it 8x optical, because in reality it's just a 4x telephoto that's a 48 megapixel shooter, but then it gets cropped in optically, so it's a optical crop versus an actual optical zoom, if that makes any sense. But regardless, the 8x zoom is super crisp. I have a bunch of photos right here to show off what like 0.5x looks like all the way to the 8x looks like. And it's very crisp, it's very easy to use. Even in some like medium lighting conditions, it still gets immense detail, as you can see from the photo that I took of my dog. You can see kind of the little cracks in his snout and his nose, even again, using the 8x telephoto lens. So the 8x lens is something that I'm gonna be using a lot, especially in the video format, once we start kind of getting used to that. So that 8x lens, I think, is a big net positive, especially for people who consider themselves like iPhone videographers and photographers. The second thing with the camera is a selfie camera. Now this could be for the 17 Pro and Pro Max, but it's basically for all the iPhone 17s. The new square sensor is all that it was made out to be. It's super convenient, it's very easy to use. You no longer have to turn your iPhone to landscape orientation when you want to take a landscape photo in selfie mode. And I think it's one of those things that I'm surprised Apple's the first one to do it, or at least the first major player to do it, because it's so easy to use and it just makes complete sense, especially as we're in a world now where selfies are used almost more so than the rear camera in a lot of occasions. So I definitely see a lot of manufacturers adopting this in their next iteration of phones. The Galaxies of the world, the Samsungs, the Pixels, they're going to be using a square sensor probably moving forward in their next phones, because it's just, again, one of those things that I'm so surprised wasn't thought of prior to this iPhone. And then another thing physically with the iPhone, that camera plateau, while it is kind of hefty, you get used to it very quickly. But the second thing is that it actually makes each individual camera protrusion seem a lot thinner and a lot smaller, and it reduces the wobble of the iPhone greatly compared to the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So that's something that I did notice right off the bat. But now to continue on with the 17 Pro Max specifically and the physicalness of the phone, this is a hefty phone. When I picked it out of the box, it is, I'm not going to say much heavier than the 16 Pro Max, but you immediately can tell the difference, and it is relatively substantial. And I don't think it'll be like tedious to hold over time, but you can definitely tell that it's heavier. It's going to be heavier in your pockets. It's going to probably weigh your shorts down if you're wearing elastic shorts and things like that. But what's nice about the camera plateau is similar to how the Pixel line does it. That little kind of like cavity in there, it helps you hold the phone up almost kind of like a finger loop, or just makes you feel a little bit more sturdy and a little bit more confident when you are holding this phone, especially if you are holding it without a case. I know most people do rock a case. I'll leave some link down below of some of my recommendations, but I do think the camera plateau is an overall net positive, but the weight of the phone could be a negative, and some people are saying that it's not the titanium versus aluminum, but it's more so the battery size. Regardless, it is a heavier phone, and that's something that you're going to have to get used to if you're coming from an older iPhone. If you're coming from the 14 Pro Max, you might not tell that big of a difference, but overall the 17 Pro Max is a hefty phone. But in that same light, the battery life, we've only had it for a little while now, so I can't give you an in-depth analysis on the battery life, but the 17 Pro Max is going to be a battery champ by far. I can tell that immediately because when you do set up your new iPhone and you start to download from iCloud and restore from iCloud and all that good stuff, it usually drains the battery a ton, and it usually gets your phone very hot. Two things happened here. The phone battery did not decrease substantially like it normally does, and secondly, the phone stayed relatively cool to the touch. Could be the new vapor chamber, could be the new cooling system. We're going to be testing that rigorously over the next coming days and weeks, but those are some of the things that stood out to me from a surprise standpoint. And the final thing of the 17 Pro and Pro Max has to be that it's a little bit more rounded off. It feels a little bit more comfortable in the hand, and it feels like every year Apple's rounding those corners ever so slightly a little bit more, and this just seems like it's peak iPhone, it's peak Apple, it's as good as it's going to get in this form factor until we get some sort of folding phone. And this is just everything that Apple has kind of worked up to over the last 18 years with their iPhones. So those are my first impressions and surprises with the 17 Pro Max. And now to transition over to the iPhone Air into a completely different ballgame, because when you pick this one up, the first thing you do notice is that it's actually facing forward and not backwards. When you open up the Pro Max phone, you get the camera first. When you open up the iPhone Air, you get the front of the iPhone first, but you pull it out and this thing is insanely light. So light, in fact, that when you pulled it up with the screen cover that it has on, the screen cover stays on and the iPhone gets picked up, versus if you try to pick it up on the iPhone Pro Max side, it'll actually remove the screen cover because the iPhone Pro Max is a little bit heavier. So the thinness, the lightness, and just kind of like the jewelry-like look of this iPhone Air is amazing. I love how it feels. I love how it looks. It almost feels fake to an extent. It feels like kind of that fake plastic kind of metal mirror-like jewelry that you used to get back in the day. But I mean that in a positive way, because of course you want this phone to be light, and it doesn't feel like you're going to break it right away. The thinness of it, the overall comfort of the iPhone Air, I think is going to help it sell drastically more models over the next coming months. It's not going to sell immediately because I think the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max is going to sell more so in the beginning, but the iPhone Air over time I think is going to sell more. But I do want to bring up the heat, right? Because the iPhone Air is made out of titanium, and one of the downfalls of titanium with the 15 Pro and the 16 Pro is that it didn't do well with heat dissipation and getting rid of all that heat. I noticed that when I did set this phone up, it got a lot warmer than the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and more specifically, it got warmer around that camera plateau, because that's where all the components are, that's where the computer is. So if you do put your fingers, even right now, I'm holding it right here, it is substantially warmer near the camera bump than down at the bottom where the battery is. So let's see how that works over time, if it's going to really affect the performance overall. So far it hasn't, but again, I love the thinness of it, I love the form factor, the thing is amazing to hold and look at, but again, it's already gotten pretty warm and it's only day one, and you can already tell that the top of it is pretty warm, and I can see that being an issue moving forward if you plan on using this camera in very warm conditions. We'll see how that ends up turning out. Now let's move on to the AirPods Pro 3, because I think this is probably the sleeper hit of the entire keynote, of this entire iPhone lineup, even though they're just AirPods. So the first thing that surprised me when I started using them, because I've already been using them for a couple hours, is the active noise cancellation is definitely 2x times better. It is better overall. Not that I was missing a lot of ANC with the Pro 2s, but with the Pro 3s, you already tell the difference. I took it on the subway. It's immensely quiet, even in a loud subway, which is crazy. And then even with music playing in the background, I was able to close that off immediately. When I'm walking my dog, it's amazing. So ANC is everything that it's touted to be. But one thing that I did notice is that the actual tips, they don't feel any really different than previous tips. These are supposed to be some sort of hybrid between foam and silicone. I've never been a fan of foam ear tips because they kind of conform to your ear and then they get way dirtier in my opinion, and then for me they've just never really lasted as long as silicone tips. But they don't really seem that much different, which is kind of interesting. Maybe there is a little bit of foam on the inside, but I really could not feel the difference both in my fingers as well as in my ear between the two different tips between the AirPods Pro 2 and the AirPods Pro 3. Maybe that's the point. It's not supposed to feel different, and that's a good thing, but they really just didn't. So one of the other things that I noticed that I really didn't like is that they got rid of the physical button or the physical pairing button on the back. I kind of like the pairing button as a just in case or as a fail safe, especially to reset the AirPods if they need to be reset. There's actually no buttons on these AirPods anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. And then also the LED light. I actually like the look of this now because before it was a visible actual light circle that was in the front of it, and now it's kind of hidden behind the actual chassis and the casing of the AirPods. Another thing that wasn't kind of really announced that is now noticeable with the AirPods Pro. And then the connection process or the pairing process is actually great with the AirPods Pro 3. Maybe I just haven't connected my AirPods in a while because they've been connected to my iPhone, but the pairing process is even cooler than it was before, very straightforward. And then if you have the Pro 3s, it does explain all the new features. So you go through a hearing test if you want to. It lets you know how they fit if you want to. You do the hearing test as well. Then you also get told if you want to turn on the new heart rate sensor, which is something I'm going to test out very rigorously throughout the next coming days and weeks because I want to see how it compares to the Apple Watch and how it works with running and how it works with fitness. But overall, AirPods Pro 3 are definitely my sleeper and probably my most recommended product of everything that came out today. And then the last thing I do want to bring up is that the most underwhelming portion of all these products has to be the Apple Watches. And I don't really know what to expect out of the Apple Watches or what I thought I was going to get with the Apple Watches. But I have had the Apple Watch Ultra 2 in the black titanium, and then I haven't used an Apple Watch Series anything in a long time since the Ultras came out. But I did pick up the Series 11 and the Ultra 3, and I was pretty underwhelmed. Like, that would be the product that I would recommend nobody upgrade to if you have anything within the last 5 years. For instance, if you have an Apple Watch Series 7 or newer, I would almost recommend not upgrading because it's just not worth it. You still have a lot of the features on the Series 7 that you would on the Series 11. Sure, physically it looks a little bit different, but not even by that much. So again, hold on to your Series 7, save your money, maybe wait for a more drastic change, or wait for Apple to stop supporting watchOS 26 or the latest version of watchOS on your Apple Watch, because as of right now, watchOS 26 will go all the way down to the Apple Watch Series 6, the more you know. And then the Ultra 3, I really thought it was going to be a little bit more of a wow factor, but it's identical, guys. It is really identical to the Ultra 2. Again, it's not meant for people to upgrade from the Ultra 2 to the Ultra 3. It's more so for brand new Ultra users, or maybe if you want to upgrade from the Ultra 1. But even then, I definitely would not recommend it if you don't want to spend the extra money. If you really want the black titanium, then I guess go for it. But the extra screen real estate is very, very minimal, that you barely even notice it. Yes, you do get 5G and SOS connectivity on the new Apple Watches, which is great, but my 4G LTE is more than fine for my runs whenever I'm using Apple Music or Spotify. So again, I was just very underwhelmed by the offerings of the Apple Watch Ultra, at least year over year. Versus the new iPhones and the AirPods Pro, year over year, they got much better, in my opinion. Overall, I'm a big fan of the new iPhones, and I'm such a big fan of the new iPhones that I really don't know if I want to go with the Air or if I want to go with the Pro Max. Now that I am using a real dedicated camera, the Air sounds like a more viable option, and I don't really need the triple camera array, but again, being able to have more than all-day battery life on this new Cosmic Orange phone is something that I see that's extremely beneficial, and having the ultra-fast speeds on the USB-C port and everything just being super tight and just kind of the best of the best when it comes to Apple, I'm a big fan of. But that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And also let me know in the comment down below if you picked any of these iPhones up or any of these new products up and what your overall thoughts are. But if you want to watch more videos like this, check out one of these right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace. If you made it to the end of the video, first off, thank you. And secondly, I'm expecting a baby next week, so you might not see as much content over the next maybe week or two, but bear with me and hopefully you guys are still around when I'm back. Peace.